The city of Baghdad shone like a jewel beneath the desert sun. Its domes glittered, its minarets rose proudly, and its bazaars overflowed with voices, colors, and scents from every corner of the known world. Merchants called out their wares: silk from Damascus, spices from India, carpets from Persia. Poets recited verses in shaded courtyards, and jugglers amused children in the narrow lanes. To the eyes of travelers, Baghdad seemed a paradise of wealth and wonder. Yet amid this splendor, there walked a figure who did not belong. A ragged dervish, clad in a robe patched so many times it seemed more stitched than cloth, moved silently through the crowded market. His staff was plain, worn smooth from years of wandering, and his sandals barely clung to his feet. Children laughed at him, pointing at his shabby appearance, while merchants sneered as he passed, clutching their purses tighter. But there were some, the old, the wise, the weary, who lowered their voices when he walked by, whispering that his eyes could pierce the very soul. The dervish wandered as if the noise and splendor of Baghdad were nothing but shadows. His gaze was not upon the stalls, nor upon the riches of men, but upon something far beyond. To some, he looked like a madman lost in dreams. To others, he seemed like a saint carrying a secret no one dared ask. One hot afternoon, the clamor of the market was broken by the thunder of hooves. The caliph's caravan passed through, guarded by soldiers with polished armor and lances high. Silk curtains shielded the ruler from the common crowd, but his presence was felt like a sudden hush. The people bowed low, making way, yet the dervish alone did not move aside. Instead, he stepped into the very path of the soldiers. Gasps filled the air. A beggar had dared block the caliph's way. The guards raised their swords, ready to cut him down, but before they could strike, the dervish lifted his hand and spoke with a voice that carried over the din, calm yet heavy with command. "Gold will not save this city," he declared. "Power will not protect your throne. Beware, for shadows gather where pride is tallest." The people recoiled, fearing the guards would spill his blood on the spot. Yet, within the curtained palanquin, the caliph himself had heard the words. For reasons he could not explain, they struck deep within his chest, like an arrow piercing hidden fear. With a wave of his hand, he ordered the guards to lower their blades. "Bring him to me," the caliph commanded. And so, to the astonishment of all Baghdad, the ragged dervish was escorted into the palace. Within those golden halls, where marble gleamed and jeweled lamps glowed, the dervish stood barefoot, unbowed. The caliph, seated upon a throne encrusted with rubies, studied the strange figure before him. Every courtier expected the man to tremble, to beg forgiveness, but he did neither. Instead, he lifted his eyes, and in their depths burned a quiet fire. "O ruler of men," the dervish said, "you build palaces as though they will last forever, but life is but a breath, a candle in the wind. You feast while your people hunger. You crown yourself in gold, while your soul grows poorer each day. Your pride is the seed of your ruin. The city trembles already, though you cannot hear it." A stunned silence filled the chamber. No one had ever dared speak so to the caliph. Some courtiers waited for the order of execution, others smirked, thinking the man insane. But the caliph felt something different, a chill, a truth too sharp to ignore. Still, pride is heavy upon the hearts of kings. Struggling between fear and anger, he rose and spoke with forced authority. "You dare lecture me, beggar? Still, I will not punish you. Take gold, take jewels, take garments fit for a noble. Leave this palace, and trouble me no more." But the dervish only shook his head, his voice quiet yet unyielding. "I do not touch the dust of gold, nor wear the chains of kings. I came not for your treasures, but to deliver the truth. Keep your riches, for soon you will find them worth less than dust." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the palace as he had entered, empty-handed, yet filled with something the caliph could not name. That night, as music and feasts filled the royal halls, the caliph could not rest. The words of the dervish returned again and again, striking his heart like echoes in the dark. He drank wine to silence them, but the echo remained. "Your pride is the seed of your ruin. The city trembles already, though you cannot hear it." The caliph buried his fear beneath laughter and song, but deep in the corners of his mind, unease lingered like a shadow. Outside, in the alleys of Baghdad, the dervish disappeared once more, wandering into the night, as if he had never been there at all. Months slipped away after the strange dervish had last spoken in the palace halls. And though the caliph had tried to cast aside the memory of those unsettling words, they returned to him in the quiet of the night like a haunting echo. The streets of Baghdad, once a river of laughter, music, and prosperity, began to grow restless. Whispers stirred in the markets. Merchants complained of dwindling trade, and the poor muttered that the palace feasted while their children starved. At first, the caliph ignored these murmurs, choosing instead to drown them in banquets and poetry. But reality crept closer, relentless as the desert wind. It began with famine. The fertile lands along the Tigris yielded less than ever before, and caravans, bringing grain, were ambushed by raiders on the outskirts of the empire. The city's granaries, once overflowing, now echoed with emptiness. Hunger tightened its grip on Baghdad, and the marketplace, once alive with color, grew dim. Where dates and figs once lay piled high, now only dust and scraps remained. Then came rebellion. Angry men gathered at night in the western quarter, their voices rising against the palace. They shouted of injustice, of wealth hoarded while the common folk perished. Soon, riots broke out. Fires lit the sky, devouring wooden stalls and creeping dangerously close to the grand avenues. The guards fought to contain the chaos, but with each passing day, the city seemed to slip further from the caliph's grasp. It was during one such night, as the flames painted the horizon in a cruel orange glow, that the caliph's heart quaked with fear. Alone in his gilded chamber, surrounded by treasures that suddenly seemed meaningless, he remembered the words of the ragged dervish. Gold will not save this city. Power will not protect your throne. Beware, for shadows gather where pride is tallest. The memory burned him like fire. Desperation overtook him. He summoned his guards and commanded them to search the city for the dervish. For days they scoured Baghdad, peering into alleys, questioning beggars, and searching the ruins of forgotten places. At last, they found him not in a palace, not in a shrine, but in the shell of an abandoned mosque on the edge of the city. The dervish sat cross-legged on the cracked floor, his robe as ragged as ever, his eyes closed in serene stillness, as though the chaos of the world had never touched him. The caliph himself came, shedding his silken cloak at the door of the ruin, his crown trembling in his hand. He fell to his knees before the dervish, his voice breaking with a grief he had never shown to another soul. "Holy man," he whispered, his pride crumbling, "forgive my arrogance. I cast aside your words, and now Baghdad burns. Teach me how to save my people. Tell me what fate demands." The dervish opened his eyes, and in them was neither triumph nor anger, only a calm fire that seemed to see through the very fabric of time. His voice was gentle, yet carried the weight of thunder. "Your throne cannot be saved by swords or treasures," he said. "What you guard with iron, you will lose with blood. Only humility can quench the fire that devours Baghdad. Go among your people, not as a king, but as a servant. Feed the hungry with your own hands. Free the oppressed who groan under your taxes. And rebuild not with stone but with justice. Then, and only then, will the city breathe again." The caliph bowed his head, tears falling onto the dusty floor. That night marked the beginning of his transformation. He stripped himself of his jeweled robes and walked barefoot through the streets of Baghdad. To the astonishment of his subjects, the mighty ruler bent down to serve bread to the hungry, to carry water to the weary, and to lift the burdens of those who had long despaired of hope. His soldiers watched in silence as their sovereign labored like a common man, his hands blistering yet steady. Slowly, the rebellion faded. The fires that had raged began to dim. Where once the people had cursed his name, now they murmured blessings, seeing in their caliph not a tyrant but a shepherd. Baghdad, though scarred, began to heal, and the great city found peace once more. Yet the dervish vanished as quietly as he had appeared. Some said he returned to the desert, others that he melted into the crowd, never to be seen again. Too many, he became a legend whispered of in coffeehouses and at family gatherings. The ragged saint, who reminded kings and beggars alike that pride builds empires, but only humility can save them from ruin.